The Grand Hall of Unity had seen many strange events since its construction, but never before had it been filled with such a heavy silence. The chamber was a marvel of design, built from living crystal that responded to sound and light, shifting in soft colors whenever voices rose. Normally it glowed with hundreds of tones as different species spoke at once, each adding their unique sound. Today, however, most delegates were quiet, curious, and waiting. At the center stood a human, Dr. Marcus Hayes, chosen by Earth's Council as a cultural ambassador. Had never imagined standing before so many alien leaders. He was not a soldier, not a great leader, not even someone who enjoyed giving speeches. He was an anthropologist, a man who studied people and traditions. That, the Council had decided, was what humanity needed to share with the galaxy. Not weapons, not machines, but culture. Before him rested a tray. Upon it lay several items carefully chosen to represent Earth. A small blue and green globe showing their world. A slim paperback book filled with stories. A wooden flute carved by hand. And a plate holding several golden brown discs with small dark spots scattered across them. Cookies. To Marcus, they were not just food. He had argued that they represented warmth, family, and friendship. On Earth, children learned to bake them with parents, friends shared them with laughter, and neighbors offered them as gifts. They were simple, but sometimes simple things carried deep meaning. The galactic conquered, he thought, needed to see humans as more than ambitious explorers. They needed to see humans as beings who cared about comfort and kindness too. But from the shifting eyes and mutters among the alien delegates, Marcus worried they thought otherwise. "What are these?" One insectoid representative whispered to another, antennae twitching. "Perhaps they are weapons in disguise," a reptilian diplomat muttered, his tail flicking nervously. "No," another added. "I believe they are ritual symbols. The round shape, the speckled pattern. Yes, ritual for sure." Marcus cleared his throat and spoke carefully, his voice steady though his palms were damp. "These are cookies. They are a kind of sweet food from our world, baked from flour, sugar, butter, and small pieces of chocolate. They are meant to be eaten, but they are also meant to be shared. For humans, they remind us of home, of family, and of kindness." A ripple of laughter echoed through the hall. To the galactic elite, who debated great technologies and cosmic philosophies, the idea of presenting food as culture seemed almost childish, but one figure did not laugh. Ambassador Lyra of the Cerithian Commonwealth rose gracefully from her seat near the front. She was tall, her frame slender but strong. Her skin shimmered like polished obsidian scales, catching the light in shifting patterns of violet and blue. Two bright eyes, the color of deep amethyst, studied the tray with sharp intensity. She was known for her serious manner. Where others mocked, she often questioned. Where others dismissed, she investigated. For years she had followed the humans' progress, fascinated by how quickly they had moved from a single planet to reaching the stars. Many in the Concord dismissed Earth as a noisy young species, but Lyra believed that rapid growth was never meaningless. She walked forward, each step echoing softly in the crystal hall. The crowd fell silent again. She stopped before the tray and looked at Marcus. "You bring us this cookie?" she said, her voice carrying both suspicion and curiosity. "You claim it shows who you are." Marcus nodded, trying not to fidget. "Yes, Ambassador. It is simple, but it means much to us. Sometimes the smallest things reveal the most about who we are." Lyra tilted her head. Her scales shifted faintly, showing she was deep in thought. Slowly, she reached down and picked up one of the cookies. Her claws, sharp but careful, held it delicately. She raised it toward her eyes, turning it as if it were a rare artifact. The crowd whispered louder now. "She dares to touch it? She must be testing the humans. What if it is poisonous?" Ignoring the voices, Lyra looked once more at Marcus. "You share this freely?" she asked. "With trust," Marcus replied. Yes, there was a long pause. Then, before anyone could stop her, she lifted the cookie to her mouth. The hall went completely still. Even the living crystal walls dimmed as though holding their breath. The crisp sound of her first bite echoed sharp in the silence. At first, Lyra's expression did not change. She chewed slowly, carefully, as if analyzing every flavor. The cookie crumbled softly between her teeth, releasing its sweetness. The warmth of sugar, the richness of butter, and the bittersweet taste of chocolate. Then something unexpected happened. Her violet eyes widened. Her scales rippled with sudden light, spreading across her form in waves of bright silver and blue. The patterns flared so strongly that some delegates shielded their eyes. She froze, looking stunned, as though struck by something beyond explanation. The entire chamber leaned forward in anticipation. Marcus's heart pounded. Had she been poisoned by chocolate? He had warned that not all species might digest it, but she had insisted on tasting it. Was she in pain? But then softly she swallowed and whispered one word. Impossible. The single word rang louder than any speech. Gasps spread through the chamber. No one understood what she meant. Marcus stepped forward, concern in his voice. Ambassador Lyra, are you well? She turned her gaze toward him, her scales still glowing with unfamiliar brilliance. This taste, she said slowly. It is unlike anything my people have ever known. It is not simply food. It carries memory, feeling, warmth, as if I can sense the story of its creation. The hall erupted in noise. Some shouted disbelief, others demanded explanations. Few species had ever described food in such terms. To most, eating was survival, not experience. But Lyra's reaction suggested something deeper, something almost transcendent. The Grand Council's presiding voice rang out, silencing the crowd. Ambassador Lyra, the voice asked, are you saying that this human creation carries emotional resonance? Lyra hesitated, then nodded. Yes, I feel joy, I feel comfort. How can this be? It is only a simple thing, and yet it carries power. Her words echoed across the chamber, leaving many unsettled. Marcus stood quietly, watching the ripple of surprise. He had hoped the cookies might bring a smile, but this was beyond anything he expected. Humanity's smallest gift had sparked a reaction more powerful than their finest technology could have. And though no one realized it yet, the course of interstellar history had just shifted. The hall remained silent for several long breaths after Ambassador Lyra's words. Every delegate stared at her glowing scales, which still shimmered faintly, as if they carried a memory of the flavor she had tasted. For a people like the Cerithians, who valued discipline and control, such an open display of reaction was almost unheard of. Some representatives began whispering again, though the hall's acoustics carried every sound clearly. She has been tricked. Perhaps humans used hidden chemicals. No, it was only flour and sugar, the human said. Marcus Hayes stood rooted in the center, uncertain whether to step forward or step back. His heart was pounding, not from fear of danger, but from the weight of the moment. He had come to present something simple, something warm, and somehow that small thing had struck deeper than anyone expected. Finally, the presiding voice of the Concord called for order. The great crystalline pillar at the end of the hall glowed bright blue as the voice resonated from within. Ambassador Lyra, the voice asked, explain what you experienced. The council must understand. Lyra's violet eyes moved from the glowing pillar to Marcus, then back to the gathered assembly. She took a long breath. Her scales dimmed slightly, returning to their usual shifting violet, though a faint silver hue still lingered. I do not fully understand myself, she admitted, her voice low but steady. But when I tasted this human creation, it was not simply flavor. It was as if a window opened. For a moment I felt not only the sweetness of the food, but also emotions, warmth, safety, familiarity. It felt as though the food itself carried the memory of the one who made it. The room erupted again. To many species, such a claim was unthinkable. Food was energy. It sustained the body, nothing more. That a piece of baked dough could carry emotion was almost absurd. Impossible, shouted one delegate with a shell-like body, its voice clicking sharply. This must be a human trick. Perhaps a hidden device placed inside. Another added, waving long tendrils angrily. Lyra raised one hand calmly. I am not deceived. I know my own senses. My people have strong perception. If there were poison or manipulation, I would know. This was different. It carried no harm, only comfort. And yet it startled me. Her honesty unsettled the crowd even more than her reaction. Marcus found his voice again. He stepped forward, holding himself with as much composure as he could. Ambassador Lyra speaks the truth. There is no trick. On Earth, food often carries meaning beyond survival. We cook together, we bake for one another, And we share meals to celebrate, to comfort, to welcome. When someone eats a cookie, they may remember their family kitchen or a childhood memory or a moment of kindness. Perhaps and somehow that feeling can be felt, even by those who are not human. Some representatives scoffed. Others leaned forward, curiosity sparking in their eyes. The presiding voice asked again, "Dr. Hayes, do all your foods carry such resonance?" Marcus shook his head. Not all. Some foods are ordinary, but some, especially those made with care, by hand and shared with love, those seem to carry something deeper for us. We don't understand why. It is part of who we are. The conquered fell into uneasy silence. For the first time in many years, the great chamber seemed uncertain. That evening after the session ended, Marcus was escorted to the guest quarters assigned to him. The halls of the Concord station glowed softly, lined with silver veins of living light. Though beautiful, the place felt overwhelming. He sat down heavily, staring at the now empty plate that had once held cookies. He had only brought a small number. He had not expected them to become the center of debate. He had thought the flute or the globe might spark more interest. Instead, it was the simplest thing that had caused the greatest reaction. His thoughts were interrupted by a chime at the door. "Enter," he said softly. The door slid open, and Ambassador Lyra stepped inside. She had shed her formal robe now, wearing a simple garment of woven material that draped across her scaled frame. The glow of her patterns had faded, but her eyes still carried an unusual brightness. "Dr. Hayes," she said, inclining her head. "I hope I do not disturb you." Marcus stood quickly. "Not at all, Ambassador. Please, come in." She moved closer, her steps smooth and deliberate. "I came because I have questions. My people are speaking of this already. Some are concerned, some are curious. I need to understand." Marcus gestured for her to sit. She lowered herself into the seat opposite him, her posture perfectly straight. "What did you feel?" he asked carefully. Lyra's eyes narrowed in thought. "It is difficult to describe. We Cerithians do not speak often of feelings. We control them, shape them, but rarely let them show. Yet when I ate that cookie, the control slipped. I felt warmth, as though I were a youngling again, safe in my brood chamber guarded by my elders. It was gentle. It was memory, but not my memory. That disturbed me." Marcus nodded slowly. "On Earth, we would call that comfort. That is exactly what cookies often mean to us. They remind us of home." "Home," Lyra repeated softly, as if tasting the word. Her scales shimmered faintly again. "Perhaps that is the power of your kind. Not your machines, not your speed, but your ability to weave emotion into even the smallest things." She looked at him directly. "Do all humans know this? Do they understand their own uniqueness?" Marcus gave a faint smile. "Most humans don't think about it. We just live it. We don't try to be unique. We just share what we love. Maybe that's why you felt it." Lyra sat in silence for a moment, then gave the smallest of nods. For her people, even that slight movement was a sign of deep respect. The following day, the Concord gathered again. This time, the hall was louder, filled with tension. Delegates argued whether humans had introduced a hidden danger or a hidden treasure. Some demanded that the humans' food be studied by scientists immediately. Others wanted it banned, fearing unseen effects. Marcus stood ready to answer, though he felt the weight of suspicion pressing down on him. Then Lyra rose once more. Her voice carried clearly across the hall. "I have spoken with the human," she said. "I believe what I experienced was not deception. It was truth, and that truth may change how we see them." Her words silenced the protests for a moment. She continued, "We pride ourselves on great ships, great cities, great weapons. But perhaps greatness also lies in smaller things, in the ability to share comfort, to create joy. If humans can carry such meaning in something as simple as a cookie, then perhaps we have underestimated them." The chamber fell into deep silence. Marcus stood quietly, heart racing, For the first time, humanity was not seen as weak or naive. They were seen as something else, something harder to measure, but impossible to ignore. And as the session ended, Marcus realized something powerful. It was not technology or politics that had caught the galaxy's attention. It was humanity's ability to make others feel. The course of humanity's place in the stars had shifted again, this time because of a cookie. The conquered council chamber had never been so unsettled. The incident of Ambassador Lyra and the human cookie had spread far beyond the hall. By the next morning, it was being discussed across every communication channel of the galaxy's core worlds. On the great station itself, delegates and staff whispered in corridors, wondering how such a small piece of food could create such a reaction. Humans had arrived only recently, and most had expected them to remain unnoticed for years. But now, because of a single cookie, Earth had become the center of every conversation. When the council gathered again, the atmosphere was tense. The crystal walls of the chamber glowed faintly green, reflecting the unease of the assembly. The presiding voice spoke firmly. "This matter cannot remain unsettled. Too many questions remain. If what the Cerithian ambassador claims is true, then the humans may possess something we have never seen before. If it is false, then we must uncover the truth." Several delegates shouted in agreement. Some demanded tests, others warned of danger. Then, to everyone's surprise, Ambassador Lyra rose to her feet again. Her presence carried calm authority. "There is only one way to answer this," she said. "Let others taste the human food. If they too feel what I felt, then it is real. If not, then it is only my own perception." The hall grew louder with mixed reactions. Some feared poisoning, others feared manipulation. But curiosity burned stronger than fear. Marcus Hayes, standing quietly at the center, felt his throat tighten. He had brought only a small number of cookies, carefully packed in sealed containers. He had not imagined that they might become a galactic test. But now, under the gaze of hundreds of species, he slowly lifted the container onto the table. "These are safe," he said firmly. "I made them myself with simple ingredients. But I warn you, different species may taste them differently. Some may find them too sweet. Others may find them bitter. But there is no harm in them." The presiding voice considered his words. Finally, the crystal pillar glowed blue again. "Very well. We will permit a trial. Volunteers may step forward." A heavy silence followed. Most of the delegates hesitated, their bodies shifting nervously. Then at last, one brave figure stepped out. It was Counselor Reth, a tall insectoid being with segmented arms and gleaming black eyes. His mandibles clicked as he spoke. "I will try. My people do not fear testing the unknown." Marcus handed him a cookie carefully. Reth turned it in, his many hands studying it with suspicion, then raised it to his mouth. His mandibles cracked into it with a sharp sound. The crowd leaned forward. At first, his expression was unreadable. Then, slowly, his antennae twitched, curling tightly. His eyes widened. A low hum rose from his chest. It was a sound none had heard before from his kind. "What is it?" someone called out. Reth swallowed and spoke slowly. I taste sweetness, but more than that, I feel peace. As though the endless buzzing of my mind has quieted. I feel rest. My kind does not know this feeling often." The hall erupted in astonishment. Another alien confirmed the claim. Next, a being of flowing water-like form moved forward. The Aquari delegate extended a tendril, wrapping around a cookie. The being absorbed it into its shifting body. For a moment, the cookie dissolved inside its liquid form. The Aquari pulsed with rippling light. "This is strange," the Aquari said. "I feel connection, as though I am with my pod once again, joined in the ocean currents. It is memory, yet not memory." More gasps filled the chamber. One by one, other delegates came forward. A massive reptilian took a cautious bite, then rumbled with surprise. "It tastes of heat and stone. It feels like the sun on my scales when I was young." A feathered avian creature pecked at the cookie, then spread its wings wide. I feel the sky. I feel flight. Every new voice added to the growing realization. The cookie carried more than flavor. It carried feeling. Each species experienced it differently, but all felt something they could not deny. The chamber grew louder and louder until the presiding voice called for silence. This cannot be coincidence. Humanity has brought us something no other world has ever shown. Marcus stood quietly, almost overwhelmed. He had known cookies were special to humans, but never had he imagined they could affect other species in this way. It was as if the comfort and memory woven into them had crossed boundaries of biology and mind. Ambassador Lyra turned toward him, her violet eyes steady. "Do you understand what this means, Dr. Hayes? You humans carry power in the simplest acts, a power that can reach across worlds." Marcus shook his head slowly. "I don't know why it works. I only know what it means to us. On Earth, when we bake something for others, we do it with care. We give it as a gift. Maybe that care can be felt, even without words." Later, when the council session ended, groups of delegates gathered in private rooms, speaking urgently. Some were excited, some afraid. If humans could create such feelings with food, what else might they do? Could their songs or stories carry the same force? Could their smallest traditions change entire species? Marcus, meanwhile, sat in his quarters again, exhausted. He had only a handful of cookies left. He almost laughed at the thought. Across the galaxy, nations debated over warships and trade routes while he sat worrying about running out of baked goods. A soft chime at the door startled him. Once again, it was Ambassador Lyra. She entered and spoke without delay. "The Concord is divided. Some want to ban your food, fearing it could control emotions. Others wish to study it, and some see hope in it." Marcus leaned back, rubbing his eyes. "Hope?" "Yes," Lyra said firmly. "Our galaxy is full of pride. Every species believes its own path is superior. But today they all tasted something that humbled them, something that reminded them of small joys, of moments they thought were theirs alone. That is a kind of unity we have never known." Her words struck him deeply. He realized then that humanity's gift was not only technology or ambition, it was the ability to share meaning through simple things. He thought of his grandmother, who had first taught him how to bake cookies in a small kitchen back on Earth. She had told him once, "The secret is not in the sugar or the butter. The secret is that you make them for someone else." And now, across the stars, that secret had touched beings from dozens of worlds. Lyra stood to leave, but paused at the door. Her scales glowed faint silver once more. "Tomorrow," she said, "the council will demand answers. They will want to know what more your people carry. Be ready, Dr. Hayes, this is only the beginning." As the door closed, Marcus sat in silence. He looked at the last 2 cookies on his plate. They were not weapons. They were not machines. Yet somehow they might change the galaxy more than any fleet or invention ever could. And in that quiet moment, he realized something powerful. Humanity's strength lay not only in survival or ambition, it lay in the ability to make others feel at home, even among the stars. The Concord Chamber had always been a place of debate, of careful words and formal voices. But ever since the cookie trial, as some had begun to call it, the chamber felt different. Delegates no longer looked at humanity as an amusing newcomer. Now they looked with curiosity, suspicion, and more than anything, expectation. The presiding voice summoned them once more. "The humans have shown us a small piece of their culture. It has stirred great reaction. But one example is not enough. If we are to understand them, we must see more. Let humanity share again." All eyes turned to Dr. Marcus Hayes. He stood at the center of the glowing floor, feeling the weight of hundreds of gazes. His tray of cookies was nearly empty. And though he knew food carried meaning, he also knew humans had other ways to express themselves. He cleared his throat and reached down to the wooden flute he had brought. "If you allow," he said carefully, "I would like to share something else from my world. Not food this time, but sound. This is a simple instrument made by hand, used by people for thousands of years." He lifted the flute, its polished surface gleaming faintly under the chamber lights. Many delegates tilted their heads, uncertain. For some species, music was only noise. For others, it was used only in rituals. Few considered it a central part of daily life. Marcus raised the flute to his lips. He closed his eyes for a moment, remembering a tune he had learned as a boy. Then he began to play. The first notes were soft, almost fragile, but the hall carried them gently. The melody rose, weaving through the crystal chamber like a thread of light. It was a simple tune, warm, flowing, filled with both joy and longing. The sound echoed, pure and unbroken. At first, silence held the crowd. Then, slowly, reactions began. The insectoid counselor, Reth, tilted his head sharply, his antennae vibrating with unusual rhythm. The Aquari delegate pulsed with rippling light, their liquid form swaying slightly to the flow. Even the great reptilian leaned back, eyes half closed, as though basking in a distant memory. Ambassador Lyra sat perfectly still, but her scales shimmered faintly, catching each note as if her body itself reflected the music. Her violet eyes softened, no longer sharp with skepticism. Marcus played for several minutes, letting the tune speak for itself. When at last he lowered the flute, the chamber remained quiet, almost as though no one wished to break the spell. Finally, the presiding voice spoke. "What is this? Feeling?" Marcus smiled faintly. "We call it music. It is sound shaped into patterns. For humans, music carries emotion. It can make us happy or sad or calm. It can remind us of moments in our lives. We use it to celebrate, to mourn, to hope. It is a language beyond words." The delegates began speaking at once, voices overlapping in astonishment. "I felt flight," said the avian delegate, feathers trembling. "I felt the sea," said the Aquari. "I felt silence," murmured Reth. "A silence inside myself I did not know I wanted." The presiding voice demanded order. Then it turned again to Marcus. "Do all humans make such sounds?" "Not all," Marcus admitted, "but many. Each person can sing or hum or play an instrument. Sometimes it is simple, sometimes complex, but it is always human." Ambassador Lyra stood slowly. Her voice was steady but softer than usual. "When I heard it, I saw the stars above my homeworld. I felt myself small yet safe. I do not understand how sound can do this, but it did." Her confession sent another ripple through the hall. The delegates had expected her to remain skeptical, yet again she admitted the power of the human gift. That night, after the council session, Marcus remained in his quarters. He placed the flute gently on the table beside the last empty plate that had once held cookies. He leaned back, overwhelmed. The door chimed again. He was not surprised when it opened to reveal Lyra. She stepped inside, her posture as calm as ever, but her eyes carried something different now. "You keep surprising us," she said quietly. Marcus chuckled nervously. "It surprises me too. I didn't think music would affect anyone here." "I thought it might sound strange to your ears." Lyra shook her head. "It was not strange. It was piercing. My people have sound, but not like this. Our songs are ritual. They are patterns meant to guide memory. Yours carried more. It carried feeling." "How is that possible?" Marcus thought for a moment. "On Earth, we don't always try to explain it. We just know that music matters to us. Maybe it's because we are fragile and music gives us comfort. Maybe it's because we are hopeful and music gives us courage, I think. Music is how we remind ourselves that we're alive." Lyra studied him for a long moment. Her scales shimmered faintly again, a pattern that Marcus had begun to recognize as her version of deep thought. "Alive," she repeated softly. "Perhaps that is the answer. Your people do not only live, you remind yourselves that you live, and you remind others too." She stepped closer to the flute, gazing at it with sharp curiosity. This small object, and yet it shook the council. "Just like your food. Your people are dangerous, Dr. Hayes. Not because of weapons, but because you change how others feel. And feelings can move stars." Marcus met her gaze. "Dangerous isn't the word I'd use. I'd like to think hopeful." Lyra gave the faintest smile, barely visible, but it was there. "Hopeful, then?" "But hopeful things can still reshape galaxies." The next day, the council gathered once more. This time they did not laugh. They did not mock. Instead, they watched Marcus with serious eyes, waiting for the next human example. The presiding voice spoke again. "You have shown us food that carries memory. You have shown us sound that carries feeling. What else do humans carry? What more lies in your culture?" Marcus hesitated, then reached for the small paperback book on his tray. He held it up. Its pages were worn, its cover simple. "This," he said, "is a book. It holds a story." The delegates stirred, unimpressed. Stories to them were records, instructions, or political speeches. But Marcus continued. "This is not a record of facts. It is an invented tale, A story told not because it is true, but because it speaks to our hearts. Humans tell stories to imagine, to dream, to see ourselves in others. Through stories, we learn who we are. The hall grew still again. Ambassador Lyra rose, her scales faintly glowing. Then show us, human. Tell us a story. Marcus opened the book, his fingers trembling slightly. He began to read. The words were simple, about a traveler who left home, faced trials, and found friendship in unexpected places. It was not about humans, not about aliens, not about war or power. It was about belonging. As he read, the chamber grew silent. Delegates leaned forward listening. Even those who normally dismissed words as meaningless were caught by the rhythm of the tale. For many, it was the first time they had heard a story told not as history, but as hope. When Marcus finished, the silence lingered. Then slowly applause rose, not from hands, for many species had none, but from wings, tails, and pulses of light. Each in their own way, they honored what they had heard, and once again, humanity had changed the stars. That night, as Marcus sat in his quarters, he felt the weight of what was happening. Cookies, music, stories, things so small on Earth, were reshaping how the galaxy saw his people. He thought of his grandmother again, who had once told him, "The smallest gifts often hold the greatest power." Now he understood, and he knew the galaxy was beginning to understand too. The Concord chamber was brighter than ever. The crystal walls shimmered as hundreds of delegates gathered for what was said to be one of the most important sessions in centuries. The presiding voice had already declared it. Today we decide if humanity shall join the conquered as a recognized member. Their culture has been shown. Their gifts have been revealed. Now we must choose. Dr. Marcus Hayes stood at the center of the glowing floor again. His heart beat faster than ever before. He had not planned for any of this. Cookies, music, and stories had been simple gestures, not strategies. Yet somehow those small pieces had touched every delegate in ways no speech or weapon ever could. But would it be enough? The first to speak was Counselor Reth, the insectoid. His mandibles clicked softly as he leaned forward. When the human played his sound, I felt a stillness inside. My kind does not seek such things. But I cannot deny what I felt. It was real. Humanity brings something we do not understand. I vote yes. The Aquari delegate followed, their form rippling like liquid light. Their food carried memory. Their music carried feeling. Their stories carried hope. Our oceans know many things, but not this combination. I vote yes, others spoke in turn. Some were cautious, worried that humans might disrupt the balance of the Concord. They stir too many emotions, warned one delegate. If they can change us so quickly, what more could they do? But others defended humanity. Is not change the reason the Concord exists? Asked the avian representative. We came together to share what none could hold alone. And now humanity brings something new. All the while, Marcus listened silently, his hands folded behind his back. He felt both pride and fear. Pride that his people's simplest traditions had touched the stars, and fear that suspicion might still block them. Finally, the presiding voice turned to Ambassador Lyra. All eyes followed. Lyra rose slowly, her tall frame casting long shadows against the crystal wall. Her violet eyes scanned the hall, then settled on Marcus. For days she had tested him, questioned him, even doubted him. And yet each time he had answered not with power, but with something smaller, something softer. She spoke at last. My people once believed strength was only in force, in logic, in knowledge. But when the human gave me a simple piece of food, I felt the warmth of his grandmother's hands. When he played his instrument, I felt the sky of my homeworld above me. When he told a story, I saw myself in another's journey. None of these things were weapons. None of these things were grand. But they reached me deeper than any treaty ever has. Her scales shimmered faintly, glowing with a soft silver light. I was sent here to test humanity. I believed they would fail. But I was wrong. They are not dangerous. They are alive, and they remind us what it means to be alive. I vote yes, a murmur spread across the chamber. Lyra's voice carried weight, and her change of heart surprised many. Some even gasped softly at the glow of her scales, a sign of honesty rarely shown by her kind. The presiding voice struck the floor with a clear tone. The votes are cast. By overwhelming choice, humanity shall join the conquered as a recognized member. The chamber filled with sound, different voices, different bodies, all expressing approval in their own ways. Wings flapped, tails thumped, lights pulsed, and deep calls echoed through the hall. For the first time, Marcus felt humanity's place not as guests, but as equals. He let out a long breath. His eyes stung, and he quickly blinked them clear. He had dreamed of this day, but he had never imagined it would come through cookies, music, and stories. After the session ended, Marcus stepped outside the great chamber. The stars shone bright through the transparent dome. He stood there quietly, trying to let it all sink in. Ambassador Lyra joined him. For a moment, neither spoke. The silence between them was calm, almost comfortable. Finally, Marcus said, "I didn't think it would work. I thought the council would laugh at us forever." "They did laugh," Lyra replied softly. "At first. But laughter is only the first step toward listening, and once they listened, they could not turn away." Marcus looked at her. "You changed too. You didn't believe in us at the start." Her violet eyes glimmered in the starlight. "I believed you were too small, too fragile. But now I see that your strength lies in small things. You do not conquer with fear. You change with kindness. That is more difficult to resist." Marcus smiled faintly. "Then maybe we'll fit in here after all." Lyra tilted her head, watching him closely. Then in a voice quiet enough that only he could hear, she added, "When I return to my world, I will bring your story, not just to the council, but to my people. They must know that sometimes the greatest force is not fire or steel, but the taste of a memory, the sound of a song, or the hope of a story." Her words carried weight, like a promise. Later, when Marcus prepared to send a message back to Earth, he chose his words carefully. He wanted his people to know what had happened, to feel the honor of being welcomed among the stars. His message read, "We are no longer alone. The galaxy has accepted us, not because of our science, not because of our power, but because of the things we often forget to treasure. A cookie, a song, a story, the smallest pieces of who we are became the greatest gifts we could give. Remember this always. Our strength is not in what we build, but in what we share." He sent the message, then sat back, feeling both exhausted and at peace. The story of humanity's acceptance spread quickly. In markets, traders spoke of the sweet disk of memory that had silenced a chamber. In academies, young students hummed the tune of Marcus's flute, even if they had never heard it themselves. And across the stars, beings of every kind began asking one another to share their simplest treasures, inspired by the humans. It was a quiet revolution, not one of war, but of wonder. One final meeting took place before Marcus returned to Earth. Lyra came to see him, her expression calm but her tone softer than he had ever heard. "You changed the council," she said, "but more than that, you changed me. I will not forget it." Marcus nodded. "Neither will I." She hesitated, then added, "The galaxy is vast, Dr. Hayes, but tonight it feels smaller. Perhaps that is the gift your people bring, the reminder that no matter how far apart we are, we can still feel close." Her words were the last surprise, the final reaction that no one could have predicted, because in that moment, an alien woman, once cold and doubtful, spoke with warmth that belonged to home, and Marcus knew then that humanity's journey among the stars had only just begun.